Hello and welcome to the Career Corner, where we answer your career cues. I'm your host, Lukas Kauffman, and today we are joined by Sean Murphy. Sean, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you, Sean. So let's jump right into things. Tell us about yourself. What do you do? What did you do at school? What are you doing now? The journey into your story.
All right, cool. Yeah, so in terms of what I do now, I'm a career coach. I started off at Ithaca as a history major, but eventually I got put into a broadcast production 101 class on accident. I think there was another S. Murphy that was meant for that class, but I got put into it. So I changed directions, became a parkie myself, and worked in media for several years. But like I said, now I'm a career coach. So I help professionals get a little clarity on what it is they want to do with their career and help them identify what barriers are truly in their way and come up with a plan to really accelerate that growth plan to get them where they want to be. My work is a mix of one-on-one coaching. I run workshops. I create free educational content, blog posts, video content, email courses, things like that. So my day to day is, it's a mix of having conversations, sometimes even like this, where it's just jumping on a Zoom call to figure out where somebody might need some help and hearing them articulate what they need help with, as opposed to just giving advice like, oh, here's what you should go do. Yeah. So ultimately, I'm focused on helping people get started to learn consistent habits to help drive the confidence that will lead to that long-term growth they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, and you touched on this a little bit, different people have different goals and face different challenges. So what's your approach to career coaching and how do you customize your advice for individuals with varying goals and challenges?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it is, you have to do some personalization and customization. But I have a pretty structured but personalized approach to it. Helping people get to where they want, but really by helping them uncover what it is, as opposed to telling them like, well, you should go do this or you should go do this. It's really trying to figure out, like, in their mind, like, where is it they want to get, and what is holding them back. So some people need help with just job search, strategies. It could be resumes, understanding like how to take like what they've done in college and map that out to transferable skills across various industries. Other people, it's something very different. It's they look great on paper, but then they show up and it's just an immense amount of self-doubt, negative self-talk that shows up in their interviews and their everyday work conversations. And so for them, it's less about the resume or the, how do you answer a question? It's, what energy do you bring into those? So, like I said, my role is really to meet them where they are, to figure out what those specific needs are. And whether it's tactical advice for one person, mindset shift for another, it's, just being open to figuring out along the way what this person actually needs and throw out the plan if what we were first starting with is no longer the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned mindset there. How much of how much of career success is determined by your mindset, and how can people cultivate a growth mindset for their professional life?
Yeah, I would say in terms of how much of it is mindset, more than you would think. Like I think that in terms of cultivating a mindset shift, I never would have thought that I needed a mindset shift until I realized it. So it's hard, like many people say, oh, I don't have limiting beliefs. So to kind of uncover those, you have to try different things. One of the things that I found to be a big shift just in terms of uncovering those limiting beliefs that a lot of people have for mindset shifts is figuring out how we talk about the stories we tell ourselves, and often the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. So there's an author who I really like. His name is John Acuff. He's written several books, and one of the things that I first heard or first read in one of his books was when it comes to addressing those potential shifts in mindset is asking yourself, is what I'm telling myself truthful? Is it useful? And is it kind? And kind of like going down that ladder, when it comes to any career shift, whether it's just like looking for a new job or like you're changing industries, it's usually the same stories that people will tell themselves. Oftentimes it's, I'm too old to start something new. So that was the first, like I told myself that when I was 27 years old, where I was like, I have to do this for the rest of my life. Like nobody's going to hire me. Like, you can't change careers. But I've done that repeatedly since, changing careers, not that telling myself I'm too old. If you're telling yourself I'm too old to do something new, like you can use Google, you can find all sorts of people who are like titans in their industry who didn't start doing things until like their 40s or their 50s. If that is the thing that's stopping you from doing what you want, then chances are, you're telling yourself something that's not truthful. If it's something that's not useful, it would be, you know, I don't have the skills for that job. That is truthful, but it's not necessarily useful if you just stop there. If you are telling yourself, I don't have those skills, you pretty much know what skills you then need to develop. So it's like, okay, I'm telling myself I don't have those skills. Now I know what to do. So move on from there. And then the other one being, is it kind is, going back to what we tell ourselves about ourselves. One of the first times I worked with a business coach, I forget what the actual thing I was working on. I think it was some sort of like business strategy. And we were just talking about it. And I was just like, like I sucked. I didn't do a very good job at this. And he said to me, he's like, Sean, I'm going to ask you to not talk about my friend that way. And I looked at it, I was like, what do you mean? And I was like, oh, I get it. Like, we tell ourselves these things all the time in our subconscious, and oftentimes even consciously. So it's the more you tell yourselves those things, it's going to keep you stuck in that sort of like negative repeating loop where you don't do anything to take action against it. So those I find are often like the easiest ways to figure out like if you need a mindset shift change, like how you answer those questions is pretty helpful.
Yeah, incredible advice. And in there, you mentioned, skills that you may or may not have coming into a position. But on the topic of skills, what are the most important skills or qualities that people can learn and should develop if they want to succeed in their career, regardless of what industry they're in?
Yeah, I think that regardless of what industry, and you're often going to hear people say like you need to be adaptable, you need to be resilient, you need to have good communication skills. The things that I would say to go even just beyond like identifying those skills would be like, if you need to be adaptable, like figure out like how do you do something that isn't in your own job description? Like what is something that somebody else is doing? What is your resistance like if somebody tells you to like they need help on something that you think you're not good at? Like just those initial conversations of showing yourself how adaptable you can be is really important. As far as communication, working on the ability to say what you want and ask for things that you want. That's a really important thing because oftentimes, especially early in careers when you're just trying to do whatever you can to sort of climb up the ladder, you'll often do anything that is asked of you, but struggle to articulate like what is it that you really want. I know when I was very early in my career working in media, I would ask people like, "Hey, what should I do to get better?" But I didn't give them any indication on like what I actually wanted to do, like what interests me. So I did so many certifications on things where I'm like, I don't want to do this. This doesn't feel useful to me. And granted, like I did those, like it helps with the adaptability part, like learning to do new things,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the ability to communicate, like, "Hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z." Those are the things that will be super helpful when it comes to things like building relationships, like where you don't feel like you have to shy away from being direct or upfront about things. Like even if it's something that maybe you feel like you kind of want to shy away from, those are huge when it comes to negotiations. Saying like this is how much I want, pausing and leaving it there, as opposed to letting nervous energy continue to sort of fill that conversation. Those are things that I think are invaluable. So written, verbal communication, resilience. That's another one that you'll hear often. Like it's just what you need. That's a hard one to just be like, okay, like that's what I need to do. Like you might know that, or you might think that you have that. So the most successful people are ones who are not going to shy away from obstacles. They're going to find ways to test that window of tolerance, or like sit with resistance for a little bit to build more mental fitness and additional skills in whatever that industry might be.
Amazing. That has anybody ever told you should be a career coach?
It was actually, I kind of said that I was looking for doing something new, and I was writing a bunch about like personal and professional growth stuff, and I kept finding myself having conversations with people about similar topics, and I was like, all of these people are coaches, and I was like, maybe that's so that was sort of like my first question where I was like, maybe I should be doing something different.
Awesome. Yeah. And kind of while we're talking about it, in your career journey, what was a defining moment that kind of shifted your mindset about personal development and success?
Yeah. So for me, I think the really pivotal in defining, or a pivotal in defining moment for me was when I was able to start realizing how I did things in my professional life and applying those to my personal life when it came to like doing big things like, specifically around mental health, physical health, and just being better at turning off work mode. Um, so unfortunately, I missed a couple of those key signs early on, that were trying to tell me that, I didn't have great work-life balance. I didn't have great coping skills as far as stress management. So I was in my 30s when I had shingles. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but basically it's a lot of nerve pain, that usually people don't see until they're much older. I was in my 30s, and my doctor was like, "You probably have some stress issues that we should work on." I was like, "No, I just work in a stressful industry, and that's just normal." So I just carried on as if like nothing needed to change. I'll just wait until the shingles go away, and maybe they'll keep popping up, and sometimes they did. So, months later, my body was like, "All right, you didn't listen then, so how about we'll try to teach you a new lesson?" And it was like, "All right, let's introduce what panic attacks are to you while you're behind the wheel of a car on a major
Oof.
interstate."
Oh
So
man.
I was just like, so those were kind of like those big things of where it's like, all right, these are mental, physical reactions to stress. And so for me, how I approached those was very similar to how I had spent years launching websites, launching streaming apps. And it was really like, how do you take this one really big monumental thing that you need to get done, but you can't just be like, okay, I'm going to go fix that tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm going to go solve panic attacks. Tomorrow, I'm going to be like, work-life balance is going to be perfect. Tomorrow, I'm going to be, super healthy. You have to start somewhere that is, not at the end. So for me, it was like figuring out, or I realized I had already figured out how to do that professionally. And so I was applying that to my personal life. It was a lot of just being okay with, okay, like, let me be okay with just walking before I start running. Let me use those runs to sort of visualize like being behind the wheel on this specific street, not having a panic attack, but also let me visualize being on the street. What would I do if I had one? It works both ways. Like the success is like, okay, I had one and I got through it. So continually to sort of like extend that window of tolerance of how I address those things in my personal life through things that I learned professionally was the biggest mindset shift for me.
Amazing. Yeah. And as you mentioned there, obviously working on these kinds of things, it takes time. You got to walk before you can run. So I wanted to ask you, if somebody is just beginning work with a coach, what should they expect in terms of personal transformation and results? Because obviously people, when seeking counseling or coaching or anything, they're, you want it to start working right away, but what can they expect?
Yeah. So, the thing, like if somebody is just starting to work with a coach, I would say one, you have to be coachable. Obviously, you are reaching out to somebody because you think that they can help you. So you have to also be open to the things that you've done continually, like in your past, haven't worked, and that's why you're here with this person, because you're trying to find a new way. That's usually one of the earlier signs of resistance is like, okay, I need to do something different. So if you are somebody who is adamant that your situation is either so unique, whatever advice is being given to you, like or strategies to help you do this, like don't work for you, that's usually the first sign that you're not going to meet your goals, because you're potentially looking for like where something could go wrong, as opposed to, okay, let me do this. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, let's figure out why it didn't work, and go back to figuring out the why part, as opposed to like, nope, that won't work. If if you are looking for a reason why something won't work, it's not going to work for you, because you have that mindset approach already. You're like, this won't work. So you know, it's a lot of like, sure, I'll do it, but I'm arms crossed kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think the most helpful way to approach it is that, regardless of what type of coach you're working with, whether it's a career coach, a life coach, people work with business coaches, sales coaches, whatever it is, it's not a quick fix. It's not about, just like, figuring out like the cheat code, the hack to, you know, becoming great at something right away. It's really about long-term shifts in, your mindset, your strategy, and ultimately your confidence. Because, the more you show yourself that you can be good at something and that you can figure out the navigate through the tough parts, that confidence will continue to, build upon itself, and that's ultimately the where you'll see the biggest transformation. Ultimately it's about learning to self-coach. The things that I work on with people, like oftentimes like they might be looking for a new job and they're going back to the things that we worked on. You're realizing how to do that self-coaching to recognize your patterns that aren't helpful that you need to change, reframe your thinking, and really take action without getting stuck in that like second guessing yourself like loop of like I'm not good enough kind of negative self-talk. So if you do show up ready to do that work, ready to try things differently, you will walk away with not just career progress, but you'll have that new level of self-trust and really like self-actualization. That's truly what was keeping you from the job that you wanted, not the oftentimes somebody will think like this person doesn't like me or the industry is going through tough times. Those can all be true, but it's the how you figure out your way around those things that are the more transformational parts.
Yeah, yeah, and speaking of industries going through tough times, while I have you here, I would be remiss to not ask you this question. Obviously, in our country right now, we're facing a lot of uncertainty in employment, especially in federal spaces, but across the country, there's a lot of layoffs happening in a lot of companies. So, in a world that is constantly changing, how do you help your clients stay resilient, stay adaptable while facing this uncertainty and rapid shifts in their industries?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to do in that is, obviously, so I myself, I've been laid off before. Like those are things that they think they're horrible to go through, but they're also not things that are so different from now than the way they were before. So like I graduated in 2002, like we were the first graduating class after 9/11. Like that wasn't a great time for employment. A few years later, there was like the housing crisis, market crash of 2008. It wasn't great to look for new jobs then either when you were trying to like get promoted or, maybe make a pivot. Now, a lot of people are definitely going through that, so I don't mean to minimize that, but, you can't eliminate the possibility of that ever happening again. So the best way to focus on how to get through those times is to focus on what you can control. None of us can truly like say like, okay, I can control how the economy is. I can control how like an entire industry reacts to how the economy is. So by focusing on what you can do, that is really like the one thing that you can do is, look for where can you improve your skill sets? Um, where can you find ways to pick up new knowledge that you didn't have? And especially for people coming out of new graduates or people who are maybe earlier in their career and have not been exposed to lots of different parts of a certain industry, the throw out your expectations of what your perfect career needs to be. The way you sort of show up when things are tough, like, can be telling. I've heard this phrase many times where it's how we are in one thing is how we are in everything. So if you are defeated in, how you are approaching a job now, like that's going to show up in other ways, like beyond just your professional career. So, the things that I found that have worked well throughout my career when it comes to like learning new things or expanding my skill sets is it's typically been, finding where I want to grow and spending my time on that and not expecting it to be given to me as a work opportunity. And not because people don't want to help you grow, but oftentimes like there's just not that ability to, give you everything you want. So work on those things and do it publicly. Share your like if you want to be a writer, share your writing publicly. Like get thoughts on it. If you're a developer, build an app, put it out there, get feedback on it. Share your business ideas, bring whatever your passion project is to life, and keep sharing what you're doing, what you've learned about it, because ultimately, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what the market is like, the more you're teaching other people, like, hey, here's what I learned, like people are going to appreciate that. They're going to remember you. But that's also how you expand your network. It's how you attract the people who you will thrive with to you, and it's how they find you. Works both ways. Ultimately, it's how you build relationships with the people that are not just the people that you work with in this job right now. So no matter what industry you go into, there's always going to be things that you can, there's going to be people that will be able to teach you things that you can learn. So, focus on building those relationships because that is something you can control. And don't wait for someone else to tell you that you are ready for something. I think that's usually one of the biggest things that hold people back and I know it held me back for years early in my career is waiting for somebody else to tell you that you are ready for something or that the actions you want to do are on the other side of getting a title change. So if you want to do something that this specific job title does, like do them. One of my favorite quotes is, to be the noun, you have to do the verb. And like that's essentially sometimes all it takes is, that's like I'm doing this, and that will start creating some of those, mental mindset shifts where you're like, okay, like, yeah, I do these things. It's not my job title, but this is what I do. If you continue to wait for somebody to say, okay, now you're ready, we're going to give you the opportunity to do these things, you're going to be waiting for a really long time. So find how you can make those things happen on your own time.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you for that, Sean. We are approaching the end of our episode here, but before we do close things out, I wanted to ask you if you have any final pieces of advice. I don't know if you can top, if you want to be the noun, you got to do the verb. That was a nugget of gold right there. But any last piece of advice you want to leave with our listeners?
I'm hesitant to give blanket advice because oftentimes it's, I know I would often get frustrated when people would give me unsolicited advice. It's, people are trying to help you, but so for me, I think it's less about the advice, and sometimes, I found that there are specific truths that once those connect for you, things move a lot differently, a lot better for you. That one, the to be the noun, you have to do the verb. That's one of them. Another one I mentioned is the what we do in one thing, we do in everything. Focus on what you can control. If you're focused on something that is out of your control, if you're just going to stay stuck right there. And another one, there's an author, his name is Michael Port, and I forget which book it was in, but he said that, most business problems are often personal problems in disguise. So it's if you are running into issues in your career, look beyond your career to see, like, do those come up elsewhere, and have you solved them outside of your career? If so, like, that's a great way to start. If you haven't, you can always start trying to solve those things outside of your career and then bring it in. So it's until I have like a one-on-one with conversation with someone, I'm hesitant to give like, here's the cheat code hack advice that will work across the board.
Sure.
There is no silver bullet, but those are the ones that work best. And another one would be action is the antidote to worry. So if you are really worried about doing something, or you don't know where to start, just start somewhere. Like the starting to do something will almost immediately take that stress away. It's impossible to be anxious and stressed about something while you are being curious and trying to figure it out.
Amazing, amazing advice. Lots shared with us today. And Sean, before we close out all the way here, where can the people find you if they want to ask you questions or seek career coaching from you?
Yeah, so I'm most active on LinkedIn. You can find me there, and I already shared how sometimes being an S Murphy can be confusing because there's multiple Sean Murphys, let alone S Murphys. So I think we'll have my actual link in the show notes. But if you forget, just put a hyphen before Sean Murphy, all is one in LinkedIn, and you'll find this Sean Murphy, not every other Sean Murphy. I also write pretty consistently. I have a newsletter on Substack. So if you look for personal sprints, you can find me there. And especially for, about to become new graduates or recent graduates, I also have an educational email course on how to start networking, because I know that that's something that people struggle with early on. Either like, I'm not good at it, I don't know how to do it, or often make some pretty common mistakes. So you can go to recentgradroadmap.com, and you can get some information from there.
Incredible. Well, Sean, thank you so much for joining us in the Career Corner.
All right, awesome. Glad to be here, and go Bombers.
Let's go Bombers. And folks at home, you don't have to wait for our next episode to get career guidance. You can visit Drop-In Hours 11 to 2, Monday through Friday, and Muller Faculty Center 101. I'm Lukas Kauffman, and this has been Career Corner.